Well, welcome to Stay Tuned. We are on location at a brewery, Four Hands Brewery to be specific. You know, this has always been a beer town, it seems, but the kind of beer town St. Louis is might be changing. Beer consumption last year was down slightly, while craft beer consumption was up by almost 13%. And you'd have to go back to a time long before AB to find as many craft breweries in St. Louis as we have today. Could there be a new Kings of Beer in St. Louis? Stay tuned.
So we're going to do the show.
Stay Tuned brings together local experts, journalists, civic leaders, and regular people to have tough conversations for a stronger St. Louis. Add your voice to our conversation, and you're at the table as we stay on top of current events and go deeper, bringing more light and less heat to the issues that matter. From the 9 network of public media in Grand Center, this is Stay Tuned.
15 to the roll. 45.
Bill Streeter,
Yep.
thanks for joining us here in the Four Hands Brewery.
Thanks for having me.
As they're brewing beer,
Yeah.
the table travels. We'll go anywhere, and I feel guilty. They're working. We're having fun. Bill Streeter, Hydraulic Pictures, and your latest project is about this very subject we're talking about today, St. Louis Brews.
Yep.
Feels like we're on the cusp of a brewing kind of renaissance here in St. Louis, but it's not the first time something like that's happened, I guess. You've been looking at our history a little bit?
Yeah, so the film's connecting the history of brewing in St. Louis, which is long and deep, with the modern craft brewing movement in St. Louis. And one thing I like to tell people is that somewhere in the 1870s, we peaked with the number of breweries in that century at about somewhere around 40 breweries. And this year, at the end of this year, with the breweries that are slated to open up in St. Louis, there will be 50 breweries operating in St. Louis, so the most ever. And that's, after a long period in the 20th century where we got down to 2 breweries at some point and then eventually got down to 1.
Bookending that period
Yeah.
where it's just kind of when you think beer in St. Louis, you automatically thought Anheuser-Busch. I love the part in your teaser reel for your upcoming project where they say, you used to walk into a bar and say, what do you got? And they'd say everything, and everything was all AB products.
Yeah.
How has how have the changes at Anheuser-Busch had an impact on the craft brewing we see here today, do you think?
I think, there was a lot of company loyalty in St. Louis to Anheuser-Busch because it was a much beloved company that made one of people's favorite products. A lot of people worked at AB. The Busch family was very prominent in St. Louis and very out there, and with Gussie Busch and
The Cardinals.
all that, and the Cardinals and all that. So it was a much beloved company. I think when they got bought out, it sort of opened up the door for people to start tasting some other things. Craft brewing in St. Louis was sort of slow to start. And when Schlafly opened up, a lot of people thought those guys were crazy to open up a brewery in
Early 1990s or so?
Yeah, somewhere in the mid-90s, yeah. And a lot of people thought those guys were crazy for opening a brewery in Anheuser-Busch land, But Tom Schlafly was actually instrumental in getting the craft brewing movement happening in Missouri because he helped draft and change the laws in Missouri that allowed craft brewing to happen.
So you mentioned that St. Louis we're by no means the first town to have this renaissance. This is happening all over the country.
Yeah.
Are we a little behind the trend, and are we catching up? How would you rank us?
That's a good. I think we're catching up, especially with the number of breweries that have just opened within the last few years. It really took off in St. Louis. It really started to ramp up speed in terms of the number of breweries opening up, like after the AB sale. And I don't know how much that was connected, but it seemed like that was part of the catalyst for a lot of breweries opening up here. And I think we were a little behind, and I think we're probably catching up to places like Portland, Seattle, and Denver are probably still far ahead of us in terms of craft beer. But it's really great to see a town that has such a rich history of brewing sort of really catch up and become a great brewing town.
So if and I say if AB has lost some of its cachet and people here locally prefer to explore and find a true local beer, we still owe a lot to Anheuser-Busch.
We do, yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. And you know that American lager that everybody's familiar with, Budweiser and Coors, and that was a very specific invention. You know, it was an innovation, you know, in beer at the time, and it was when they struck on that formula of making that style of beer, which is a totally original American style of beer. That was a huge turning point, and it was very celebrated, and it was a very sought after and popular product almost from the very beginning.
Where do you see St. Louis brewing going in the next 5 or 10 years?
And I really don't know. I mean, I hope it continues to grow, and I hope places like Four Hands and Urban Chestnut and all these places continue to innovate and make great products. I mean, I have no idea how.
Do they want to become the next Anheuser-Busch?
I don't think so. I think they're all striving for different niches, like all of them. And when I talk to them, that's what they're, you know, there's a lot of talk about, you know, people. The first question you think of when you have all these breweries in one place is like, oh, there must be a lot of competition, a lot of like fighting in between them. And on the brewing side, I don't think that's really true. There's a lot of camaraderie and sort of a brotherhood among brewers, and they all sort of swap recipes and like
Really?
to talk shop and stuff.
Bill Streeter, when can we expect, I'll put you on the spot. You're probably tired of people asking about St. Louis Brews, the documentary you got coming out, but I know a lot of people are excited about it. Do you want to give us any kind of a tease for a completion date, a release date?
Yeah, actually, I have a very specific date. It's November 3rd. It'll premiere at the St. Louis International Film Festival, and I'm sure they'll have a specific time and date on their site, but it'll be at the St. Louis International Film Festival.
Well, good luck to you. You're still in the process of completing the understand, and we're looking forward to seeing it. Thanks for your history today.
And thanks for having me.
We should share a beer.
Yep.
Why do we not have a beer right now?
Yeah, we should.
Okay, so we've come back over to the 9 Network. We're in the Public Media Commons with Kat Neville of Feast TV, where we can often see you doing Taste and See here in the Public Media Commons. One coming up on beer, if I'm not mistaken.
Pizza and beer on June 17th.
Very good. Okay, so then we're going to draw on your beer expertise. We'll save pizza for another time.
Okay.
Tell me what's going on. Is this beer thing real in St. Louis when you look at it from outside of the city limits and our little subculture of beer here?
It's definitely very real. The culture of beer in St. Louis, it's part of our heritage.
Sure.
It's part of, especially St. Louis having such a heavy German influence. There used to be breweries on almost every corner. People would carry their pails with them to pick up beer and take home for the week. And so what we're seeing now with this resurgence of craft brewing is going back, in time a little bit. And each brewery, really has its own personality, its own way of approaching beer. And that's what makes it so fun, is that when you go to these different breweries, you're never going to taste a beer that is similar or alike, because each brewer, that's part of what it means to be craft, is they're putting their stamp and their personality in the product that they're creating.
Which may explain why we hear them talking about how much they cooperate and what a community is with the brewers themselves.
Yep.
Some awards I've been reading about a little bit. Tell us, are people taking notice of the beer that we're putting out now?
Absolutely. St. Louis is creating beer on a world-class level. And because we have so much energy in this industry, we're ideally located in the center of the country. And a lot of our breweries that started out small, like a Four Hands or an Urban Chestnut, they now are distributing, far and wide. They aren't, some of the craft brewers, they want to stay small, that's their aim, but some of these other guys, they have a real interest in taking St. Louis beer to a much larger audience, and that is making it so that people around the country are paying attention to what's happening here.
Is it still kind of a boys' club? Are women brewers getting involved in this at all?
There are more ladies getting into brewing, and there are actually some women brewers groups, and traditionally women were the brewers.
Really?
The brewsters, and so it was part of your weekly chores at home, so you'd bake bread and you'd brew beer. And so over the years it was taken over by the guys, but historically it's women who were the brewers.
And is it pair with food in the way that we think of wine? Does it have that
Absolutely.
level of complexity?
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about the difference between a light lager and some of these new really interesting sours that are on the market, the breadth of flavor and even just the heaviness of certain beers and the level of carbonation and all this kind of stuff, you absolutely compare beer in the same way that you do wine or even cocktails now to enhance food. And that's really what so many of these beverages are designed to do, is not just be consumed on their own, but it enhances the culinary experience. And I personally love sour beers for that reason. It's one of the reasons why I really like wine so much, is that kind of like bright acidity. So to me, sour beers go really well with food.
Fascinating. I'm going to have to try some sour beer.
Oh, you should.
You're also in Kansas City with Feast TV. I'm curious, is there any comparison? Are things happening throughout the state that you see with this beer?
I mean, the craft beer industry across the nation is growing. In St. Louis, it has, I think, more energy than it does in other spots around the state. Again, going back to just that very steeped beer culture that we have here. But you do definitely see folks that are experimenting no matter where they are in Missouri.
Kat Neville, Feast TV, thank you so much.
welcome.
Looking forward to Taste and See here in the Public
Thank
Media
you.
Commons.
Yes, I expect you to be here.
I will, don't worry. Thank you, Kat. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it. We're joined by the lead brewer. Is that the right title?
Yep.
Lead brewer, Andy Bergio, here at Four Hands Brewery, and you've got something special some 9 network members actually helped come up with this beer at Cloud 9. Is that right?
That's correct.
So tell me about it. What went into it, and what can we expect from Cloud 9?
Cloud 9 was a beer that was developed by a team who won amongst 8 other teams, developing a beer, taking a base beer of ours, which was Citywide, our American Pale Ale. But they took that beer, and the winning recipe came up with was fresh raspberries, lime, and vanilla beans, which blew me away was the fact that it tastes like a grapefruit creamsicle. And once tasting it, knew that we had to make this beer and be part of it and work with them.
So the amateurs kind of impressed you, it sounds like.
Definitely impressed me. Taking ingredients that don't taste like something natural that you can taste, and then putting those together to taste like that or something different, to me is always impressive. And the fact that it tastes delicious also goes along with it.
I'm fascinated by what goes on here, because just around the corner from these tanks, I see a man actually zesting limes. You will get the oils from those limes. This is all very handmade and very fresh ingredient process, it seems like.
Yeah, and that's part of us staying craft. And he's actually really lucky. He has what we call like an automatic zester, which he cranks and it moves along and takes care of it. When we first started, we did it very manual with a little tiny zester that you'd use at home.
Yeah, like when you hit your knuckles.
Yeah, when you're doing a case of limes, your knuckles aren't doing so good by the end. So
very cool.
But that's how we try to keep everything as far as natural ingredients, not just natural flavors, and then figuring out how to put those in the process of the beer and where to put them to make beers that are fresh and that are really what we call craft. That's what we want to stay true to.
How will we be able to get our hands on a taste of this Cloud 9 beer?
Everybody who participated and pledged will automatically have the right. They've already purchased bottles of beer, and there will be a release for that. Also be available in our tasting room.
Andy, thanks so much for brewing this beer and for your time today.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well done. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Well, it was just 4 guys standing around a couple barrels. Nothing weird about that. But no, this is a cool space, and the crew has put together a cool set. And what will be, that we're above the Four Hands Brewery right now, and this will be a new tasting room, an arcade, event space.
Yes, we're right over our existing tasting rooms. This will be a second story spillover for tasting room, private events, vintage arcade.
He's Kevin Limp, he's Steve Kreider, and this is Stuart Keating. All from different breweries. So Earthbound, Second Shift, Four Hands. We've been talking today. I think what kind of has kind of boggled my mind is you guys, just before we were getting going here, you're talking about collaborating. There's so much kind of commingling between you guys. It seems like you guys are friends, not competitors. Am I right about that?
That's the only reason to be in this business. Everybody hugs everybody. I help him, he helps me. Everybody's buddies.
Share secrets
It's-
even and share recipes?
Oh
or-
yeah. My open book. Yeah, everybody
We've
loves
had
everybody.
calls for, hey, we need some yeast. Can we borrow some yeast? Or we're building this malt bill right now and we're short 100 pounds of this malt. Can we borrow some of that? Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a pretty transparent industry.
How'd you guys get into this business? It's taking off. I want to talk about that, of what's going on citywide, maybe nationwide with craft brewing, but things have kind of been on what seems like a kind of a rocket ship trajectory for each of you. Stuart, what were you doing before you were making beer?
So before I was making beer, I was running an environmental nonprofit and doing some just kind of odd job sort of stuff.
How long ago?
I left that job at the end of 2013 to be a freelance attorney and game designer and open a brewery. So it's been a little over, we incorporated in February of 2014, opened in November of 2014.
And now how many barrels of beer are you making?
We produced 177 barrels last year. If we get our expansion open toward the end of this year, we should be able to knock out about 800 barrels this year. And yeah.
Same question. So because there are different, you all are in different stages. You've been doing a little bit longer.
Yeah, I'm the longest one here, but I'm just above him and below him on barrels. We got open. I got license done in 2009. First batch went out in 10. Last year we did 754 barrels. This year we're looking at about 1,200 maybe. After we're moving, bought a new building, moving into the city.
Moving to the hill.
Yeah. Apparently the first brewery on the hill ever. Yeah.
What were you doing before you were brewing beer?
Millwright, maintenance machinist, welder, fabricator. Yeah, building and fixing things.
What were you doing?
So I was sales and marketing, craft beer and wine centric for about a decade beforehand.
So that's a pretty big leap to go from your basement or wherever it might have been to depending on it to put bread on the table. How did you make that decision and why?
It arises out of a love of chaos, along with, it was really kind of a bar bet. My friend Jeff, who's one of the co-owners of the brewery, moved up here in 2013. And we were talking one night, we'd been neighbors in college, and he was actually living in the apartment above mine. And he was like, I've got a little bit of money set aside. I don't like my day job. I'd like to go do something for myself. Do you have any ideas on starting a business? And I was like, well, I have this really crazy idea where we open the smallest possible brewery, and we do it with used equipment equipment we built, and we focus entirely on tap sales and on draft sales, and we can probably be cash flow positive and then figure out what we want to do with it. And so he put up about half of the money that I said it would take to do it, and we did it up with that much money. So we have no other outside investors.
So maybe it wasn't that crazy of an idea.
No, it was really crazy. We had to put in a lot of work, and we're fortunate that we have between the three owners, Rebecca, Jeff, and I, we represent a really wide variety of skill sets, and we were really able to kind of cobble the thing together.
So there must be something going on though, because people have responded to all your products. What do you think is happening? Why are people drinking up, for lack of a better pun, craft beer right now?
I guess I always put it like, if you like going to McDonald's is good every now and again. Boy, is it nice to eat steak. Or go to Morton's or whatever. People are starting to say, I want more, I'll save the McDonald's for later. Or the smaller, non-flavorful, typical American beer. And people love, beer can have flavor. And it's opening, I think people are just getting their minds open to that. Like, beer can taste like this, it can taste like, it's more complex and more flavored than wine. My wife's a somm, and she says it.
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot more complexities going on. There's 1,000 different more deeper details.
The nose is involved.
Yeah, you have to drink.
Don't drink it out of a can if you can help it, because you want to get the nose into it.
Yep, I'll drink Stag out of a nice glass. Yeah, makes it better.
It's affordable luxury too.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I mean, I guess there is, there's a time for a 30-pack, right? But I think that maybe, right. There's more of a time now where you're going to spend, that premium price for a really beautiful bottle of a 750 milliliter beer or a 6-pack, or it's much more creative. I always just say now that beer is not just beer anymore, and like Steve just alluded to, there are so many different characteristics in beer. You've got all the different grains, you've got all the different hops. The one thing that really surprised me when I first got into the industry was yeast, and what yeast can do to manipulate and really add to a beer is really shocking for somebody that is just getting into beer and wondering where that flavor is coming from. A lot of the time, it's that yeast strain. Barrel aging, stainless steel fermentation. There's just such a wide array of what we're able to do and put in a glass and a bottle.
I'm amazed too, especially just walking through Four Hands, how much of it is very hands-on. Very, we talked about a guy down there zesting limes. I mean, it's very kind of.
We don't push buttons.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's hands-on. I mean, I would say that we do it the hard way. We add lime or we add orange into a beer. We have a guy downstairs or a gal downstairs zesting limes and oranges. Now we're taking that zest and we're pressing it, and so we're just getting the essential oils. We're not just going out and buying essential oil. We did that and we went side by side, and we really realized that doing it the way that we're doing it is the best result.
Is how you make a luxury product, perhaps.
So that's how we'll spend the time and we'll spend the energy. And I joke that if we need to have somebody on staff all day zesting fruit in order to press that zest to put into our beer, that's what we'll do.
You're making a lot of beer though, so you started out, as I understand it, with about 4 tanks that could fit inside of one of your tanks now, and you now have 16 of those tanks. In how many years? How fast have things exploded for you here at Four Hands?
We started December of 2011. We started with 4 15-barrel fermenters. Today, and that would have been about 900 barrels capacity, 800 barrels capacity. Today we have 18,000 barrels of capacity. By September, we'll have about 32,000 barrels of capacity. At that point, we're landlocked. We've maximized and we have been as efficient as possible within these 4 walls. But we're not looking to go from 17, 18 to 32. We're not looking to enter more markets. We're looking to be an inch wide and a mile deep and just really organically grow and service our current customer.
We actually want to be a mile wide and an inch deep. We want to push out a huge variety of products. We're actually filing about 40 different labels for this year for production. So we're actually aiming to put in a whole bunch of tiny fermenters so that we can just keep everything full with different products.
Do you want to go beyond St. Louis? You're just moving in. You're just now moving into the city.
We've been selling in the whole state of Missouri since the beginning. We're in Nashville, Tennessee. We're in Tennessee now. Next market would be D.C., Chicago. I've been talking to people in California, which covers everything west of the Rockies, including Hawaii. So I have to go on business trips all the time to check out accounts.
Seems terrible.
To make sure the accounts are pouring fine in Kona or something sometimes.
It sounds as difficult as the work we are doing right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So the same conversation could be had in Portland. You said Hawaii. They have local beers in Hawaii. Mm-hmm. They have local beers in Colorado on the East Coast. Is this an industry that's just about saturated, or are there more up and coming beer brewers even here in St. Louis that are still coming online?
I don't think it's saturated yet. I think it'll be a few more.
I don't either.
I think it'll be 5 to 10 more years before, if it stays at this pace, the bigger guys are going to make it very tough to get shelf space and make it. Then it's going to shrink back to very, very local. Because when I started 5 or 6 years ago, whatever it was, people were calling me. It was no problem. I'd walk in. I had no idea what I was doing. I walk in the store, say, "Hey, my name's Steve Kreider. I got a brewery," and they say, "We'll take it." Really? All right, cool. That's not going to happen from now to the future. I think it's going to get difficult.
You have the sales background. What do you think? What's the future of craft beer?
I think that the future is really bright, and I don't think that it's saturated. I still think that there's plenty of opportunity. I also think it's in kind of the eyes of that brewery. If we've got 4,100 breweries, 4,400 breweries maybe by the end of the year in the nation, if everybody's goal is to do 150 to 200,000 barrels, we're in big trouble. Yeah. But that's not what's going on. Everybody's really trying to find their own niche, and I think that St. Louis is really a perfect example of that. If you take a look at the breweries in St. Louis, in the direction that everybody's kind of going and really trying to just do their best at. Everybody's doing a really good job of kind of filling out that full spectrum of flavor profile in the city. I would argue that you could find anything that you wanted in St. Louis, any style that you're interested in, you could find a really beautifully made example of that made in St. Louis.
Is there any sense of history in what you do? Do you guys ever think, or is there any pride in knowing our beer heritage here in St. Louis? So we talk about there were a lot of craft breweries prior to AB, and then AB really introduced beer drinking to Americans. I'm just curious if that ever enters your mind, or is that for somebody else for historians to care about?
I mean, I'm rehabbing a building that was a brewery from 1866 to 1902. So it's on my mind every day, mostly good, sometimes bad. But yeah, I mean, I think that we're all very conscious of the fact that St. Louis was America's great beer hub prior to Prohibition. And a lot of American beer culture was derived out of St. Louis. So I think that's something that we all pay at least a little attention to.
There's so much history. Yeah, it's so exciting to just be, a little speck on the map of what has been done in this awesome city when it relates to beer. And I mean, for us to be a small part of that, we're thrilled.
Thank you, gentlemen. Stuart Keating from Earthbound, Steve Kreider from Second Shift, soon to open on the Hill.
Yep.
And Kevin Limp from Four Hands. Thank you all for sharing the insights. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
So maybe a little more craft brewing in our past than we might have realized, and who knows? Quite a bit of history still to come. I want to thank Four Hands Brewing for hosting us and all of the guests on today's show, including Kat Neville and Bill Streeter. Until next time, stay tuned.